Okay, I know I have not talked to you guys in a while. I apologize. I've been extremely busy with work and I've been pulling really crazy hours at work, and so I've been burnt. And excuses aside, I'm here now for the moment, so I wanted to update you guys and let you know what's going on with the Cion. Because I know there hasn't been a lot of activity on here, and I figured I owed you guys an update of some kind. So here it is. It's still here. Different lens, different monitor. I repurchased the same Nikon lens I was using on the Red 1 earlier this year, the Nikon 17 to 35 f2.8. So yeah, I had to replace the lens mount. Bought a Nikon lens mount for the Cion, so that's what I'm doing. I was looking at getting like a Tokina Cinema zoom, but this was a lot cheaper, and I'm all about saving money, so that's where I went in terms of the lens for now. And then I've got this really fucking shitty ass Portkeys monitor. It's the PT6. I don't recommend this monitor to anyone. I'm having major problems with it, which I'll get into in a minute. And then on this side here, you can see there's a wooden hand grip that's been installed on the camera that actually has a start-stop trigger on it, which is pretty cool. So it kind of is like a little mini Anton camera now. So the reason why you haven't seen any footage from this thing yet for me is because I'm still figuring out my workflow. To say that this camera is a headache would be an understatement. It is a massive headache. But what I have found is that the camera, regardless of all the early reviews that you can find on Google and stuff about this, there's a lot of reviews out there that say that this sensor was only 8 or 9 stops of dynamic range. Absolute bullshit. This camera is a true 12 and a half stop dynamic range camera. The problem is that AJA's software team on this camera completely dropped the ball. That's where this camera's weakness is. The hardware is great, the ergonomics are great, the sensor is beautiful, the color science is great, but in terms of like going through the menus and all that stuff, I mean, most cameras operate in a Rec 709 or logarithmic space, right? Like those are the two big ones. Or if you're doing HDR, Rec 2020, right? So this camera said, fuck all that. And their work, like to get the most out of the camera in terms of light information from dark to bright, you have to turn the gamma curve off. And then that gives you a linear gamma curve, which is a lack of a gamma curve if you're on an X and Y axis. A linear gamma is just a straight fucking line through the middle. And so you have to then take that and convert it to either Cion or log C, and then from there you convert it into whatever the fuck you want in order for it to be viewable. So it's a headache. The reason why it's a headache is because it's really hard to monitor linear gamma exposure-wise when you're shooting it, and I've tried creating some transform LUTs that take linear to Rec 709, and anytime that I import it into this fucking monitor, the LUT comes out like the grayscale is all just milky and washed out and just bland, and so like it's not showing up correctly. I blame it on the monitor only because I go and put my LUT into Final Cut and it looks fine. So something from SD card to monitor is not communicating right, and this monitor is not reading the LUTs correctly. So I'm most likely going to be replacing this monitor and trying something a little bit nicer like a small HD or an Atomos Shinobi again or something. I had the Shinobi with the, oh god, I don't even remember what camera I had that with. Oh, the GH6. I had the Shinobi with the GH6. I loved the Shinobi, so maybe giving that another try. We'll see in the coming weeks here. But that's the biggest thing. So while I love the camera, there are things that I do love about it. The learning curve, because you have to work in a completely different way than any other camera that I've ever used in my life. I can very much, after having the camera for a month and a half, see that the reason why the industry said, fuck that thing, because I don't know why AJA did it this way. I really don't, because they're, in my opinion, a superior company over Blackmagic. They just dropped the ball on the software in this thing. All they needed to do was create their own flavor of log, put it into this fucking camera, and we'd have a completely different story about this thing. That is the reason, in my opinion, why this camera failed, is that they did not incorporate a logarithmic curve in this camera, and in order to get the maximum amount of information, like dynamic range, out of the camera, you have to shoot linear. No fucking camera shoots linear. I mean, I've had a couple cameras, I think like the VariCam, and there were a couple other cameras out there that had the ability to do it, but why would you do it? Why would you do it? I don't have any reason to do it, but now I do, because that's the only way to get it. So the next question, which I'm rambling all over the place, the next question from some previous stuff that I talked about in this video is like, well, Mike, why don't you just shoot with the pre-built gamma curves that are in the camera? So there's a few of them. There's normal, video, cine, and expanded. What I have noticed is that in terms of dynamic range with those pre-built ones, the video gamma has the most dynamic range, which makes no fucking sense to me. And regardless of any of them that you use compared to linear, if you expose linear correctly, you're losing dynamic range on any of the pre-built gamma curves. So I'm learning to love this thing, but this thing is a fucking mess. It is a absolute fucking mess when it comes to software. It just, I don't know what the fuck AJA was thinking when they built, like, I want to reach out to them and just be like, all you guys need to do to resurrect this thing from the dead is just build a fucking log curve. That's all you have to do. Literally, all you have to do in order for this thing to function properly is put a log curve in it, figure out your guys' own flavor of like AJA log or whatever, and then make a monitoring LUT that converts that log space, retaining all the information and putting it into Rec 709 so people can expose correctly. You do those two simple fucking things, and I guarantee you all of the used cameras on eBay will be flying off the fucking shelf. It's the learning curve that's the headache. It's not that the camera is a piece of shit. It's that AJ like went right up to the finish line and then stopped and was just like, never mind. Now, to say that you can't get a good image out of this camera would be a lie, because you can. And in my opinion, if it's done correctly, this camera gives the closest image to an Alexa than any other camera. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that swear by the Sony F3 and say the Sony F3 is the mini Alexa. This camera, image-wise, if you do things correctly, is better than the F3 by a fucking landslide. Absolute fucking landslide. The problem is, for some reason, AJA decided, fuck the logarithmic workflow, we're going to go in a linear workflow. And nobody except visual effects artists use linear. So I don't understand why they did that. And it's just, causing me to learn some new things. And that's part of the reason why I like using all of these older cameras, is because you always learn something new about the process. And man, is this thing fucking putting me through hell. But all bullshit aside, all shit talk aside, this is an amazing camera. It's just, it takes a lot in order to figure out a workflow to make it work. I kind of went through a similar headache when I was learning the VariCam like 6-7 years ago, because that camera is not true logarithmic either. Can't talk today. And I had to build my own lookup tables, and I had to build my own workflow in order to get the maximum amount of dynamic range out of that camera. And, I made some really good looking stuff on the VariCam. So I think my efforts proved positive on that. And it's the same thing that I'm going down now with the Cion, is that understanding that this camera sees light a little differently, and it encodes it differently. And so you have to kind of unwrap it and then rewrap it in order to get it looking good. And when it does look good, I mean, I'm sorry, you can't beat 12-bit 444. That's a lot of information. And so you can bend, the image is very malleable in post, which is good, especially with the way that this thing, you have to work with this thing in order to get a good image. So it does make up for itself. You just have to be patient and understand that you're kind of starting from scratch in terms of the gamma curve, because there isn't one. And that's if you want the most, like, if you're not worried about dynamic range and you don't, Jesus Christ, I don't know if you guys heard that. A car just backfired really bad outside. That scared the shit out of me. So, what was I talking about? Like, if you're not worried about dynamic range or anything, then I guess use the video gamma. That's the best gamma that's in the camera in terms of, I don't know, all the other ones just like clipped the dynamic range, the highlights even more. It just looked weird to me. So yeah, I mean, I honestly, I feel like if AJA, if some software developer in Grass Valley, California at their office there just like went back into the building the firmware and they looked at the gamma curves, like literally if you just built a fucking log curve that responded to the sensor and you put out a final firmware update, I guarantee you, camera would be amazing. So yeah, now I guess the last thing I would say as of right now, would I recommend this camera to anyone? You have to really know your shit in order to get something good out of this. This is not a beginner's camera. This is not a camera that's meant to, this is one where like you really need to be in tune with things and have the patience in order to get something good out of it. So would I recommend the camera? Well, if you're at the level of stuff where I'm at or higher, yes, I would recommend it, because I think for the money, it's one of the best cameras on the market. But in terms of like, if you're just like a beginner hobbyist, or you're like, you don't really know a lot about gamma curves and the inner workings of cameras and stuff like that, stay the flying fuck away from this thing. That's my opinion. So that's it. That's all I got. I will get you guys footage from this as soon as I can. I will say that there will be some new video stuff going up here relatively soon. I bought Nick the new GoPro for Christmas, and I gave it to him early, and he's actually using it today up in the mountains. So I'm really excited to see the footage that he got. And the fact that GoPros can just shoot 10-bit log now, that's what I'm most excited about, is like getting his footage back, because I programmed the GoPro to shoot 10-bit log. So I'm really interested to see what that looks like. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got. And as soon as I have a workflow down and I'm able to monitor things and get footage the way I like it, then you'll start seeing footage from this thing. But until then, please just be patient a little more, because it's a learning curve. So I'll talk to you guys later.